This is a new place.
So I have a question.
Go ahead, hit me. Of course you do. Yeah.
How many listeners would we have to be able to support buying nice leather-bound chairs that we could sit in for every show?
I mean, a lot more than we have.
Yes,
A lot
good
more
point.
than
Good
we
point,
have,
guys.
yeah.
If you could tell other people about this show, please, so that we could get nice leather chairs. For those of you that aren't watching, oh my gosh, this is a luxury.
I mean, we are really just chilling right
This
now.
is it's Friday.
It's Friday. We just finished an awesome full day retreat with an amazing contractor client. But you know what? I think we should give him a shout out.
You want to? Yeah, give them a shout out.
I think they'll like that.
Yeah, I think they will too.
Anchor Mechanical, awesome company,
Yep.
Maryland-based mechanical contractor doing work in Maryland, DC, Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, growing business, ton of fun to be around these guys. And they just built a kick-ass plan for the year ahead.
Yep.
With a little help from this fella.
Both fellas.
And so we are, we're buzzing, and we're like, let's bang out a show in some leather chairs.
Let's just record a pod.
just rip off a pod, man.
Sling a pod real quick.
Yeah, tear down a pod.
Tear down a pod. All right. I think we've exhausted. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've done that. Okay. Good. Well, welcome. Hi. Hi, everybody.
Let's do a check-in, Matt.
Cool.
So I hope you're familiar with the format by now. We check in, we talk about a topic that we're both passionate about. We have a little bit of an argument. We wrap things up. There's a hard and fast rule that the show is about
an hour.
It's about an hour.
About an hour. Hard and fast.
I'm Chad Prinky.
I'm Matt Verderamo.
And this is the Morning Huddle Well-Built series. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing very, very good. It always feels good. We've talked about this plenty of times before privately, but it always feels good to set out to do a thing and then do a thing. And there's obviously a lot of planning that goes into even just holding a retreat like this.
Totally.
And a lot of checkpoints in between, the first time you're talking about agenda to actually running it the day of. And so to be on the other side of doing it just feels really good.
It does. It is like after a really good workout or something like that, where you're like, you know, I did it, and it feels really good. And I've never, but unless it was crappy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then you're walking away like, oh no,
I did such a bad job, facilitating.
Yes.
Thankfully that doesn't happen often, but for me this week, Matt, this is my third retreat.
This week? Whoa.
Yeah. There's one on Tuesday.
We'll count Wednesday.
And so you're 2 for the week. I'm 3 for the week.
Yeah.
I've got another 2 next week.
Yeah.
Wow. It's retreat season, baby.
Yeah.
I love it. It's fall. We're looking at next year. This year's pretty clear in focus. We know what it's gonna. We essentially know how it's gonna shake out.
Yep.
And we're able to put our energy into thinking about next year in a good way. Look, I mean, you can do a retreat any time of year, but this is a great time of year to do it. That's my check-in. Is retreat season's tough. I don't see my family a lot during the week. I travel a lot during it. It's tiring on the body and on the mind, but it is so rewarding, and it sets up all the good stuff for the year ahead.
Yeah, you're so right. And then you get into the next year and into next year's retreat, and you review all the stuff that you did in the past year, and you're like, oh my gosh.
And with our clients, we'll be with like for years and years and years, and we watch this whole thing kind of unfold. This is your first time circling back.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It is
so
such a wonderful feeling. You're going to get to enjoy that all fall and winter long as we go back to all these people that we did the annual planning session with last year. And you get to go in and watch them realize that they did the dang thing.
Yeah. So cool.
And that they're like, they have a lot to be proud of. And you kind of sit there, you're like, yeah, I've been really proud of you the whole time.
Yeah. So true. So true. Well, I'm excited then. I didn't realize this was a recurring feeling.
I mean, unless you have to give them hell and be like, you didn't do anything.
Yeah, I know.
But this won't be the first time they've heard that.
Yeah. Right.
And really, I mean, if they have been struggling to get things done throughout, that's been the focal point of the discussion. And they know it. So it's the retreat is even in those cases where, because it happens, man. Not there are years where companies don't get the opportunity to really like, spend as much time working on the business as they would like.
Right.
Right. There are years that a key person quit, a key
Yep.
client left. You know what I mean? Like
Market conditions. Yeah.
yeah, market conditions. Totally. They lost a big job that was like supposed to take most of their year, got pushed.
Yeah. Yep.
And they're in scramble mode, and what started off last year with like, this year we're going to nail down our SOPs turned into like, this year we're going to survive.
Yes.
And we become coaches for survival in that circumstance, as opposed to working on the business. They know and it's okay. Like there are times when it is, as I often joke, like it's very difficult to think about remodeling your bedroom when there's a fire in the kitchen.
Well, it's such a good point. How do you balance that as a third party consultant, but even as a business owner? How do you balance that fire, putting out the fire versus wanting to install the facade, the pretty facade on the building?
You have to stay very focused on the idea that your first priority is always the current health of the business. If the business is not healthy today, you can't be focusing on the long haul. You have to be focusing on immediate health. And so that is probably an unsatisfying answer to a certain extent, but um what I think, however, is the definition of health is debatable.
Right.
It's out there. I think um, the business has to be able to be financially viable. That's the minimum definition of health.
Yeah.
That I would have. It's got to be financially viable, paying all the bills. Uh, Keeping up with payroll. We're not sweating that type of stuff. If we're sweating that type of stuff, strategic initiatives are things like,
Right.
how do we get in a better position right now? And they're shorter term endeavors. That's all. It's like we have a 3-month push to fix X.
Right.
And
Right.
now that we've bought ourselves a little space, we can start working on what got us into X in the first damn place.
Right. Yep.
And maybe it takes us 9 months to implement the systems or whatever we need that keep us from experiencing the pain we just experienced.
So that's a very interesting answer. I especially like your point about shortening the initiative time frame. The planning horizon shortens, and honestly, for everybody listening, we're sort of shifting naturally. Actually, I didn't even really mean to do this, but shifting naturally into our topic for today, which is why it's important to maintain growth. And I think it would be interesting to start that conversation right along these lines, which is what I'm imagining is that there are probably contractors out there listening, and obviously we work with a lot of these types of contractors that are going, okay, I want to get into that place where I'm not always thinking about the hottest fire, and I want to get out of survival mode, and I want to start looking at longer term strategic initiatives. Obviously, it's important to maintain growth, but how do you get started? What are some of the mindsets or principles you use to get started shifting from being in that fire mode where you've obviously still got to do short term stuff, but you're trying to work in strategic planning and growth into that equation?
Okay. It's 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 a 3-step thought process.
Love it.
The first thought is put out the fire. That's the first thing you have to do, is put out the fire. And that's totally like, if there's a fire in the damn kitchen, you have got to put out the fire. The problem is that putting out the fire takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. And particularly for most contractors who are relatively small businesses, right? Like the average contractor is small. So if the first answer is put out the fire, and put out the fire takes a lot of energy, my second answer is stresses you out. But the second answer is essential, because the second answer is get to the root of why the fire freaking started
Wow.
and get into fire prevention mode. Um, uh, so that you don't have to put out that same fire again. You'll have other fires, but so that you don't have to put out that same fire again. And I think what happens is, Matt, like, I'm going. There's a fire. Now I'm doubling down. I'm working extra hours. I'm dealing with the fire. It's super stressful. That is a painful experience. And once I put out that damn fire, I'm like, I need a break.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But like, I
Yes.
want you to imagine in my theoretical scenario, right, that the fire in your kitchen is actually caused by an electrical problem in the basement.
Right.
But you're so focused on putting out the fire in the kitchen, you're running back and forth with buckets, and you finally get the fire put out in the kitchen. You're like, I need to lie down.
Right.
And
Right.
you do need to lie. I get it. Like, it's totally understandable. You should lie down, right? Oh shit, the fire's back, right? And now you're back up and you're dealing with it. Now you're in that cycle, and now you're just getting like enough rest just to put out the next fire.
Right.
And that's what these businesses go through. That's what the business owners go through. It's what the project managers go through, and I could name everybody on the list. But so number one is put out the fire. Number two is fire prevention, and you really do have to have the discipline to find the extra energy, to make the extra time, to say,
Yep.
God damn it, I'm going to do what it takes to get to the root cause here. We're lacking training. We don't have the right person in the right seat. We got to fire this person. We've got to recruit and replace. Our technology is we have a huge gap in our technology, and it's causing this communication breakdown. It's I could keep going, but you get what I'm saying.
Yep.
Whatever the root cause is, and resolve that thing, because if you don't resolve the thing, the fire will start again, and you'll be putting out the same fire and over again. And we've already illustrated that that's a negative cycle. Once you've done 1 and 2, you actually can get yourself to a place where you can dream big, you know so and I think, just to be clear, you don't have to have no fires going on at all in your business
Right.
to dream big. But those fires, that kind of gets back to what I was saying before. It's like, those fires can't be um, threatening your very viability
Yeah.
as a business.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yep.
And be otherwise, it's like, it's stupid. What are we even talking about?
Right.
If you desperately need work and that's the only freaking thing that will get you through to the next thing,
Right.
and we're talking about what we're going to do for leadership training,
Right. Right.
it's a
Improving the
painful
employee
feeling.
evaluation process. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
We don't have work
And I
for
and I've
next
and I've
month.
had those retreats, right? Where the retreat is really like, hey, this is actually going to be a full day planning session about where the hell we're going to get work
Yeah.
in the next 3 to 6 months,
Yep.
so that we can remain financially viable and set ourselves up so that we can actually talk about fun shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that all makes total sense. I love the 3 steps: put out the hot fire, fire prevention, and dream big. I think that there's like there's a discipline that has to go into going and doing fire prevention, I think.
Totally. It's boring.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not urgent, because the fire is urgent, and fire prevention is like, it probably won't start again.
Right. Right.
It probably won't start. We're probably fine.
Right. I think you're right. Yeah. So I think discipline there comes to mind, and then like a competency to get to the root cause also seems like a very important thing there.
Yeah.
But one of the things I think is super important about both of those things is that they lend into making you very good at maintaining growth, or at building a strategic plan, or maintaining the discipline to be a long-term thinking company.
Totally.
And you sort of learn some of those skills and competencies just by saying, I'm done putting out the fire.
Dude,
Is that a fair way to put it?
an excellent way of putting it. And the successes of fire prevention build confidence, and they create this sense of, we're making it. And it enables you to start believing in dreaming big, because that is one of the saddest things. It's a human experience. I'm sure it's not just a construction company thing, but I don't know.
Right.
I just experience a lot of construction companies.
Yeah.
But it's very sad when the company has forgotten how to imagine a bright future.
Right. Right. There's something that you have said to me before that I find myself saying a lot now that I'll share because I hope it helps people out there too, which is when I've done something that led to a success, you'll go, or even a failure actually.
Yeah.
Now that I say that, you'll say to me, I am so glad that you can share that story and that you had that experience. And so now when I am going into a contractor and I'm saying, hey, this is how you run a really awesome sales meeting, interview them, don't, whatever, right? And then they come back and they go, hey, that worked.
Yeah.
I go, cool, that's awesome. And now you have a story you can tell the rest of your team that this really does lead to that. This works. X then Y then Z does truly happen. And yeah, so I just love that point that you made. And for anybody out there, like being able to find those wins is so important to get momentum towards that growth, so that you can keep sharing those stories with your people and demonstrating that, like, no, this is really working.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And
So
and back to growth.
yeah, right, exactly. So maybe we should go there. So why is it important to maintain growth, Chad? Now that you've gotten to this baseline level, that you're getting into the strategic planning idea, and maybe you've been growing, but you haven't been doing that, but you're trying to make all of this happen at once. Why is it so important to maintain that growth as you move forward?
Well, I'm gonna speak to the very, very practical and literal sense of growth in the form of revenue growth eventually. But before I do that,
This is a great, yeah,
I'll have a little side road where I just say, like, you know, there's all like, would you consider it to be growth if a company who had deep trouble creating happy customers was starting to get a lot of positive customer feedback? Is that growth?
oh man, what a great point. And yes, absolutely, I would.
Right. So what I like, if even if you're sitting there watching or listening right now and you're thinking like, the last thing my company needs is growth in the revenue sense, I'm gonna argue against that in a minute too. But I'll at the very least, will you give me growth in the form of continual improvement?
Right,
Can you at least give me that?
right.
Can you agree that that it is just, it's goddamn un-American not to try to get better every day. Do you know what I mean?
Don't make this about being
It
American.
now pisses me off, right? As an American, the idea of not being better tomorrow than I was today just doesn't jive. Like it's about progress. It's about, it's
Hmm,
there's something about that in our value system
interesting.
that, like, when people are like, no, 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 tomorrow I'm okay, just being exactly the same as I was today, like, that just doesn't feel right, doesn't sit right with me. And that's not just my personality, that is a cultural thing here,
Yeah, it's true.
so anyway, so your point, and you're agreeing, like, you'll grant that that growth can come in lots of different forms,
Absolutely.
and that's important.
Absolutely.
People want to feel like they're a part of a winning team. If you don't continually make positive progress,
Yeah.
great people will leave,
Yep.
because the best people don't want to be surrounded. They don't want to be on a sinking ship. And if what you'll have are a whole bunch of people who don't mind being on sinking ships,
Yeah.
which is a really weird vibe. Like, we're
Wow.
going down. Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Right.
cool.
Yeah. Right.
That's a weird, weird vibe, and it's a recipe for failure.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to talk about revenue growth, because you need that too. And I know that, like, I get into battles with people about this and all that. And look, you don't always need it. It doesn't need to be constant. It's not like every year you have to continue to just stack and stack and stack. But the same essentially holds true, Matt, is that you're not going to keep awesome people if you don't have awesome opportunities for those people. Plain and simple.
Yep. Yep. So like, what do you mean by awesome opportunity? How does that fit in here?
Build the cool thing, build the next bigger thing, career progress,
Yep.
personal financial growth,
Yep.
rewards and challenges. Um, if they, I can't tell you how many people um, I hear when they talk about why they work for a certain company with pride, is like, I believe in your vision. I'm actually, honestly, I'll say it, I'm very proud to hear that from our team.
Right.
Um, I feel like our people, we are doing a thing that the whole reason people join us is like, because they're bought into where we're going. It's an exciting
Absolutely.
place. Right.
Absolutely.
And so you can see yourself in our future org chart, and you can see, you know what I mean? Like, you can picture you, and great people need that.
Yeah.
Because they know they're great. Like,
Yeah.
in their core, they know they're great.
Yeah.
And so that's why you need to grow, because you have to be creating opportunities for great people. And if you don't, you won't have great people. And if you don't have great people, well, then, you probably shouldn't be in business.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all so great. And I really appreciate that you made the point about having developmental growth without revenue growth and
Yeah.
how that qualifies. And actually, even as you said that, something struck me that I didn't realize would, that even if you have revenue growth without developmental growth, without cultural growth, without psychological richness growth for people, that revenue growth can actually be a detractor. Because if you've just got, if externally you are showing up and you're saying, I'm making all of this money, we're doing all of this revenue, but you have very unhappy people inside the business, the same thing is still going to happen. So these things really
Totally.
are tied together. And I do think one of the important parts about the idea of even that developmental growth is if you say, okay, we're going to start thinking about the future and thinking about growth. And the first step of that is to not grow. But there's actually a beauty in that. It's, we are going to spend the next 12 to 18 to 24 months writing processes, creating job descriptions, right, putting an org chart together, all of that stuff, so that in 2 years we can go, whoa, we did it. And now we actually added 3 points to our net profit. And that
Yeah.
feels so stinking good, because before we've been just all over the place with that stuff. Now let's put some energy into going out and chasing clients, getting more revenue, and really showing the team what we can do, what we're capable of.
It's funny how that works.
It
It's when the goal isn't revenue growth, um, how naturally it, like, oops, it happened.
Yes. Yes.
Like, we're
Wow,
not,
what a good point. What a good point. Yes.
and you know
Yes.
why it's
Yeah.
happening? Because you're just a better company,
Yeah.
and you're actually more
Yeah.
capable of handling the stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, we see it all the time. We're companies in the 1 year we've been doing this, and the whatever it is, a couple dozen different companies that you've had the opportunity to work with and watch along that journey. Can do you have pictures in your mind of companies that weren't trying to grow revenue, but were instead trying to grow developmentally, but accidentally grew revenue and bottom line at the same time?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, just go be better
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
the answer.
I think
And
that's
I
true.
think if you just bear in mind that, and because I hear that a lot from owners, I really do. A lot of the owners that I'll talk to, a lot of the construction owners that I'll talk to are very stressed, and the mere concept of taking on more work is like, no, 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 no,
Right.
we don't need more work. And I totally empathize with that position. I get it. Not just sympathize, but trust me, personally empathize. We're running a business too.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but what I'll always circle back and remind them is like, look, here's the deal. If it was easy, would you want to grow? Right? If it was just a piece of cake and it wasn't stressful and it was just humming, well-oiled machine, would you want more money then, or no? You're going to pass on the additional growth, right? And they're like, well, duh. If it was easy, I would grow. I said, okay, so let's focus on making it easy.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, because I'll say this. I don't. Are you sure? Is it ever easy? Are you sure? I don't know. Even when even when you get the stuff in place, yeah. I don't know that I'd ever say that it's easy there. Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Clear, maybe.
Easy.
Yeah. What does easy
is
mean?
That's exactly right. To me, here's what I mean by easy.
Cool. Love this.
Fun.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, we're gonna go do a thing. Let's go do a thing. Oh my God, we're doing the thing. Whoa, it's working. I can't believe it's happening. Oh my gosh, we did it. Right.
It is always
What's the next thing we're gonna go do?
Right. That's right. It's always hard work, but there's good stress and bad stress.
Oh man, what a good point. All right, fine. It is easy. Don't listen to me. Listen to Chad.
Make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's the definition of easy.
It's
The
easy
definition
to
of
say,
easy.
let's keep growing.
Yeah. Right. So, but let's not focus on growing. Let's focus on making it easy.
Yeah.
If we focus on making it easy, growth will naturally come. And then
Ugh.
when you're ready for it, Mr. or Mrs. Owner, when you're ready for it, we're going to sit down and we're going to build out a financial future that gets you really freaking excited.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. I love that. And I want to toss this in there. I imagine there's got to be at least one person that is like yelling at their car right now, yelling at their car speakers that are like, yeah, but revenue growth without profitability growth. You got to talk about profitability growth. I'll just say that as Chad just defined easy, when we talk about growth, just so you guys all know, anytime ever, we are talking about profitable growth, because we would never recommend, and any company that's going through that same thing, to do $30 million this year and make $2 million off of it, and to do 40 million next year and to make 2 million off of it, or $1.5 million off of it, is not a sustainable future, and why you chase growth. You got to get other stuff in place first before you go do that stuff. So just keep that in mind if you're.
I concur.
Yeah.
And I will also say, you have to be a realist and recognize that growth does cost money.
Yep.
You are going to add resources. You're going to spend on marketing. You're going to invest in technology. You're going, right. And as you do that, it may be, Matt, that you do have a $10 million increase in revenue and you don't increase the bottom line at all. But the reason you didn't increase the bottom line at all is that you made investments that enabled that additional revenue growth. And next year, that 40 is going to grow to 60, and you won't have to add additional costs
That's a
to
great
do
point.
it. And so now you're at 60 million, and you're having a $6 million net, or a $12 million net.
Yep.
Because whatever, right? Because of those investments. And so I just want to stress the point that it is not give a dollar, get 10, give a dollar, get 10, like that's not, that isn't the way it works. It does take time for these things to pay off. And one of the biggest reasons not to go for growth in the mindset of a lot of owners is like, I need to make as much money as I can every year, and I need my money out of this business. And like, I get it. That's very tempting.
Yes.
Here's the problem is that people are going to quit. Right? People, and you're going to be on some sort of repeat cycle that you're going to be repeating the same efforts that you had last year, next year, and over again.
Yep.
All right, let's have an argument, Matt.
Cool.
Let's get into our XVY for today, which is should we, as we're building out this vision, should we share our future org chart with our staff?
So when we're talking about the org chart, by the way, talking about structurally how we're set up, talking about positions, talking about putting names on those positions and who works in those spots. And I'll tell you what, in the world that we're living in, and the ease of getting information, the next generation wants to understand who they report to. They want clear job responsibilities. They want a clear understanding of where they're going to go in their own career. And so I'm an overwhelming yes that we should be sharing not just the current version of the org chart with our team, but also future versions of the org chart with the team. And that could be 1 year, that could be 3 year, it could be 5 year, heck, it could be 10 year in the future, that you're actually showing people that this is what we expect to look like at that point. And here are some opportunities that are going to be available because of the growth that we're projecting, and the positions that we'll have as a result. So I'll toss it back to you. I mean, do you see any flaw in that? Is there anything wrong with creating an org, with showing the team where they're trying to get to?
This is a terrible XVY because I can't win. I don't.
Yeah, thanks for letting me go first. Yeah.
Boo.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you're saying. I do, however, I'll poke one hole, and I'll say that when it comes to the future org chart, Matt, I don't include the names. I think that it is extraordinarily valuable.
The names of the people or the titles?
Yes,
Okay.
the names of the people.
Got
So
it.
I'm not plugging in and here's Matt and here's Aaron and here's Fulton and here's
Right.
where they all are on our future org chart. I'm very opposed to that. In fact, unless a very clear succession plan has already been, called out, and you're saying by this time this particular human will be in this spot. But I think, along the lines of like, what that future generation wants, they also want to be able to envision themselves on that org chart in the place that inspires them.
Interesting.
And I don't, I
Is that your
as
primary motivation?
as look, Matt, as you know, I am a violent capitalist.
Yes, yes, yes. Very violent. Yeah, yeah,
I am
great.
I am a brutal capitalist. And one of the things that matters to me most is that it's always going to be best person gets the job.
Yeah.
Always going to be best person gets the job. There's no sacred cows. There's no, special promises. There's no my little guy,
Yeah.
like there's no junior. This is the one I was grooming.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a football team, dude. Better running back in the room. That guy's getting the start.
Yeah.
And so I stress that point to say that I want people who are inspired by where they want to see themselves, and that gives them fuel to find their best performance
Mm.
and reach their highest possible level. And if I put Matt in this spot on my future org chart, and I've got a young person who's seeing themselves in that spot, they are actually saying, well, to get there, I can't be here.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that.
And it's just the opposite message I want to send.
Yep.
There are, and I'm not going to name any names or anything like that right now, but you probably know them in your own sphere. There are CEOs of some of the most powerful, successful construction companies on earth who are like 38, 42, like should have no business being the CEO. I guarantee
But they just
you
went.
that's right. I guarantee you they did not put Bill's going to be the CEO,
Right.
62-year-old Bill's going to be the CEO on that org chart,
Right.
which is what gave that young person the fuel
Yep.
to become that person way before they ever should, quote unquote, should have. And so, yes to the org chart, and the right now org chart totally put names.
Yeah.
Totally put names. Like that all makes sense. Though I also am a personal fan of the true org chart, which is where we put the function. I'm a functional org chart guy. There's some people like the quote unquote accountability chart model. I think it's soft. I think that's bullshit. I like a functional org chart that actually shows me, what are all the functions that are being played in the business, and where does, oh shit, Chad's there, Chad's here, Chad's here, right? Like
Right.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's called a functional org chart.
Yeah.
The functional org chart is not a high. It does demonstrate hierarchy, as it should. It's
Yep.
business. What are we doing?
Yep.
So, but I don't want to show a hierarchy. Suck it. What are you even saying?
I know. If that's where you're at, then you got to have other conversations with your team. If
so
like
weird.
then there's candor and other conversations that need to
So
happen.
so is it uncomfortable for somebody here to have to report to somebody
Right.
here?
And to know that somebody else is above them when they're
Thank God I'm in construction, not education, or something like that,
yeah.
right? Like this is not a
you would do
daycare,
very
bro.
poor. Yeah. So let me make sure I understand and make sure our listeners understand too. When you say that functional aspect, would an example of that potentially be that somebody is the president of the company, but functionally they are also serving as the director of estimating and pre-construction
That's
because
exactly
they are
right.
overseeing the estimators directly.
Boom.
So their name, Chad's name, will say president, and Chad's name will say director of pre-construction.
And Chad's name might even say project manager.
Right. Right.
right? And that is a great honest way to look at your org chart and be like,
It
oh
really is.
crap.
Yeah. Why do I have 5 jobs?
Exactly.
No.
I've got 5 jobs. And so one of the nice things to do, one of the things we would encourage you to do is to lay out essentially every function that has to take place in your business, from estimating to business development to project management, field supervision, all these functions in your business, and then truly be honest about where every person falls on that org chart. That is a great today org chart,
Yep.
right? And then as you build out your future org chart, you can identify that this is going to be one person playing this role, and this person is not going to have other hats,
Yeah. Yep.
and so on. But again, let's not name the person. It would be my contention.
Yeah. No, I think, and you've got me convinced there for sure. I think it's super important for people to know that they have to continue to demonstrate fitness for the role to get there. And yeah, and so it just makes sense. And so much changes, life circumstances change, and all of that, and you never know where people are going to ebb and flow in their own personal motivation and all that stuff. And so putting it out there in front of them, but also keeping some information of, like, where do you want to get to and how are you going to get there, I think
That's
is
right.
a good way to think about it.
And there's I'll admit that I'm so, again, in my capitalist worldview, I'm a big fan of the meritocracy, and I'll admit that the meritocracy environment can create this sense that, like, if you don't want the top job, then you must be a loser. I want all the competition without the negativity,
Mhm.
because I think it's totally cool for people to point at a spot on it and say, that's the one I want. I actually don't want another thing. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
So I hope that the audience doesn't hear me as judgmental
Right.
on anybody that doesn't want to become the CEO. Very few people should be the CEO. It's actually
No.
not an awesome job. It's a very, very hard job. And most people aren't suited
Maybe
for
we
it.
should go back to the check-in. How are you, CEO Chad? Is everything okay?
I'm not okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's fine. But I have
But your
5
point,
jobs.
yes,
I have
you
5
do.
jobs.
You
Yeah,
literally
and
do.
and we're
Yes,
we're
yes.
we're remedying that situation every day,
Trying.
one day at a time. But yeah, that's where I'd stand on it, man. I think if companies, and the reason that I brought all that up was to say, to your point, like, things are very fluid. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the idea that, like, hey, the person who was the vice president of estimating when he was 54, well, now he's 58. Somebody else is a better fit for that role. I don't have to wait until this person retires to move this other person into that role. It's okay for me to say to the person and say, like, hey, time to be a senior estimator. That's where you play
Yeah.
in our scheme. It's exactly like a longtime quarterback becoming a backup.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay.
Yeah, I know.
There's
Thank you
nothing
for saying
wrong
that.
with that.
Yeah.
And you know, how often you actually see that play out in the corporate environment. How hard is that on somebody's ego? And a lot of that has to do with kind of the cultural temperature that you set in your business. But there's also, look, there are going to be certain people whose egos just can't handle it.
Yeah. No, it's true. And maybe we'll leave it at this point, but that also just sparked for me this idea that I think the more that you share this stuff with your team, this being the org chart and the current and the future, the more that they start to understand that there's somebody in that depth chart position, and that naturally the person that's in that position should be the person that's best for that role. And the more exposure you give them to these business planning tools, the more that they're going to understand and be able to utilize them too. So
That's
just
right.
another reason to do it.
That's right. And as you know, I've actually already called out the day and time in my ideal world where somebody else is the CEO and it ain't me.
Yeah.
I am looking very much forward to firing
Yeah.
myself from that job.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what we're reading, and we can wrap up.
Cool. Mine's easy this time, but I'm actually listening to a book called $100 Million Leads by Alex Hormozy.
Cool.
Big time influencer, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of that, but that's not why he's famous as much. He's just a content machine. And book is all about creating leads for your business so that you can get to, $100 million business. And very solid practical advice. Hormozy's not actually my favorite guy. The more that I've paid attention to him, he's a little bit crass, and
Yeah.
that's not really as much my style, but it's good to listen to that kind of stuff. But very functional, operational book that if you are wondering, especially if you're in a service-based industry, we have a lot of contractors that we work with that have some kind of service arm to them. Really some good stuff about cultivating leads and demonstrating deals that are out there and opportunities and getting those things in the door. So overall, good book, and would recommend it.
Awesome.
What about you? What are you reading, Chad?
I finished reading pretty recently a book called How Big Things Get Done. Have you read this one?
No, I haven't.
It's a dual author, Dan Gardner, and this Scandinavian person with a name that I have no idea how to pronounce, but I'll give it a shot, which is Bent Flyberg.
Yeah.
See how that goes.
Cool.
But How Big Things Get Done. And both of these guys come from a construction background, but they're writing it's cool. And they're writing a book that's applicable in theory outside of the construction industry, but also very much to the construction industry, about how big things get sort of planned and done and all that kind of stuff. And it's got sort of these key principles, plan slow, act fast, like that kind of stuff. And they talk about the Empire State Building and how incredibly quickly the Empire State Building went up, and why, how in the world have we not been able to replicate that kind of speed in our modern world with modern technology and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
It is a very effective case they make a very effective case for changing behavior that I think could influence the construction industry. My number one takeaway, and it's in the very first chapter, but it doesn't mean that the rest of it's not great. It's just, for me, it was, punch in the face was the plan slow, act fast.
Love that.
Yeah.
Plan
really
slow, act fast.
stuck with me through the whole book.
Wow.
I kept on going back to it. They use real case studies, right? Well, here's this project. And I'm like, well, yeah, it was successful because of the thing you're talking about, but they also plan slow and act fast.
Yeah. Right.
That is, cool. I think, maybe the most. It could have been
first principle.
A pamphlet called Plan Slow, Act Fast, and the book would have been equally impactful.
Yeah. Got it. Totally understand.
So, as you know, I often read books that I sort of feel okay about, but that I recommend to people because of the positive impact of certain sections. That's one of them.
No, totally makes sense. Awesome. Well, cool. Well,
this has been fun.
Yeah, it flew by.
It did fly by. I don't know if we're about an hour or not.
I think we're a little shorter than about an hour today.
I don't know.
We're about an hour enough. We've been a little longer than an hour.
Fair enough. You think we're just giving back a little?
I think if you averaged all the episodes, they'd be about an hour.
I think that's probably true.
The total average of all the...
And I love making this podcast, but it's also not our full-time job. Our full-time job is working with awesome construction companies at Well Built Consulting. If you'd like to check that out, check us out at wellbuiltconsulting.com. Thank you for tuning into this.
It.
Yeah, you won't regret it. It's awesome videos, awesome content, more of this stuff. If you like Matt, he's on there a lot. If you like me, I'm on there a lot. If you don't like either of us, you're gonna hate the website.
But there's some other people on there too.
There are some other people. That's true. There's John, and John's like a totally different dude.
Yeah. John is much different. If you don't like us, you will really like John.
That's
true.
Demonstrably true.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Thanks
for
so
tuning
much,
in.
Chad. Thank you, everybody listening.
Later.